Hi, welcome to Tech Tuesday today. Today we're going to talk about Moodle access restrictions, completion, and basically how to use Moodle to guide students through their participation in Moodle. So I guess the first thing is to kind of explain what restricting access and activity completion is about. For instance, if we've got a Moodle activity here, and I'm just going to call it a homework assignment or any kind of assignment. It can be literally anything in Moodle. And the way we can look at this, and we're going to look at a bunch of these, is pretty neat. But if you've got this activity that you want them to do prior to doing whatever the next activity is, what we can do is we can make this now a prerequisite for this one through activity completion. So basically, by adding activity completion, they're going to see a little box at the end of whatever the item is in Moodle. And when they've completed it, they will see a check mark go in there. And there's a number of different ways to log completion. But basically, we can say that this is not, you can't do 2 until you've done 1. And one of the things you can do with this as well, which is the way I've got most of mine set up, and it's part of gamifying Moodle, is to say not only can you not do 2 until 1 is completed, you don't even see number 2 exists until 1 is completed. So basically in Moodle we can have a whole list of items that are on our Moodle page, if I can number there, that you don't see 2 until 1's done, you don't see 3 until 2's done, you don't see 4 until 3 is done, or you could say you don't see 2, 3, and 4 until 1 is done. These restrictions are really all based on however you want to set them up. So number 1, we have to look at how activity completion is done. And it's different based on what kind of activity it is in Moodle. And then we need to look at the available restrictions and how to manage those items as well. And you can have all kinds of restrictions. We're going to look at a bunch of those first. So the first thing is, in order to get the ability to even see activity completion, we have to turn on activity completion in our Moodle course. And I'm going to use my hardware class today. If I'm logged in as a teacher in the course, I always see the administration settings and I see the edit settings button. And if I go down to the bottom, one of the things down here is completion tracking, and I have to have that turned on, which by default it's going to say no. So I have to have completion tracking on before any of these things are even available to you. So that's the first thing, is to turn on completion tracking in my class. Now, I guess I should point it out back in the same thing. This, if you haven't switched to the new version of Moodle, is the index view, so you only see the title of each one of my sections in here, along with a little synopsis of what is in there. And you can see this one's not, or is got restriction on it that you can only see E-days until March 30th, then it goes away because there's nowhere we're going to do an E-day most likely after March 30th. Of that year. So you could have them go both ways, that you can only see it until a certain date, or you can only see it after a certain date. But anyways, this is the index view. That's also set up under the edit settings here. And if I go into edit settings, and under right here under appearance, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, it's under course format. This is a new option here where it says course layout, show 1 section per page. The old default on Moodle was show all sections on 1 page, which if you don't realize, made your page loads really slow, and it makes your course load slow, and it kind of inundates student with a lot of information at one time. So showing 1 section per page makes it so when they come in here, they get an index to your course. I've got the current section highlighted. They know if they click on here, they're going to go into chapter 3, and now all they're going to see is Chapter 3. I'm going to start out with a more basic section. I'm going to go back to my first fundamental one here. And you can see some hashed check marks and some solid check marks around some of, or next to some of my activities. So let's go to some of these. This is just a web page to look at. And I'm going to go there, and it's my I can statements. And basically, I want to make sure my students are reading my I can statements. So I make a lot of things in any given chapter unviewable until they've looked at them. I want them to know what the learning objectives of this chapter are, so I don't want them to see anything until they've reviewed the learning objectives for the chapter. So how do I make sure they've seen that? In this one, if I say Edit Settings, and I go down here to the bottom, there is activity completion, and that wasn't available if I didn't uncheck that one. So I'm going to look at activity completion, and because they've already done it, it's locked. But it said to complete it, student must view this activity. That's all they have to do. They have to go there, they have to view it, and it's considered complete. And I'm going to make a new one, a new resource to kind of show you that and what my options are there. So I'm going to turn editing on, and we're going to stay in Chapter 1, and I'm going to make a resource down here at the bottom of Chapter 1. And I'm going to go down to my resources, and I'm going to just say it's a page that I have set up that I want them to read, for instance. And I'm going to go ahead and make that. I'm going to say Course Syllabus. So I would then inside here in the content area drop my entire course syllabus, and I could easily do that. I'm just going to type entire course syllabus here for them to read at some point later on or early in the class. And so now I'm going to go to the activity completion and say there's some different ways that this can be marked complete. So completion tracking, I can hit the question mark at any time to understand those things, but I'm just going to show you. There's really, on this one, because it's just reading page, there's a couple options. One, do not indicate activity completion. So they're not going to, it's just going to turn it off for this item. There'll be no box beside the item. The other one is students can manually mark it. In other words, you're telling them that they have to read it, but when they're done, they have to check mark, yes, I've read the whole thing, which means they can't just click on the link and come back out. They have to click on the link, come back out, and then check mark it. It's kind of an extra thing. And then you can also say it's complete when these conditions are met. There's only one condition on a web page, and that is student must view this activity to complete it. So you'd have to check mark that. And now you're saying that if they come into this and they go back out, it's going to be considered complete. I'm going to return and go to course to show you what that looks like. So now we have this item down here at the bottom of Chapter 1. If I can slide down a little bit. It says course syllabus, and it has the hashed marks around it. It's not solid. That means anytime you see the dashed line around the outside, it means that something has to be done for that to be complete. If you see the solid line, it means the student just says, I'm done with it, which might be a good, you have to make sure the students understand, but it might be a good way of saying you've signed it off because you checked it off before they can move on. So the difference there is if I did that option on activity completion and no one's done it, so it's not locked, I can change it, must manually do this, and then I'm going to save and return to course, and you'll see now it's just a solid box. Some of these other ones are the same way, and bouncing around on me, here we go down here. The course syllabus, now you see it's a solid box, and they'll just click on it and it will show a green check mark when they're done with it. Let me turn off editing here real fast so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so when they're done with it, in this case, this does nothing. On this case, if they check on it, it just checked off. They're saying, I've read the course syllabus. Now, they don't have to go in there to do that. They can check mark things without ever looking at them. So it's kind of like, which way do I want to do it? Do I want to say, you've got to go in and read it, but there's no way to say you read it, other than that. So now I'm basically saying, hey, if you check that, you're telling me you read it. You're signing off that you read that item before something else can happen. Okay? And there's a completion report, and I'll show you the completion report in just a minute. So that's a resource, and resources all pretty much work like that, that you don't have a lot of ways to say that they viewed a resource. Okay? So, for instance, this entire chapter 1 book with everything I want, all the different things I wanted to read on there, if I just use that, then they're saying they read everything. But there are other things that I can do to restrict on those things as well, and we're going to kind of get into those as well. So that's one thing. So resources are like that. If I had any other resource, it's going to basically be the same thing. If I go into a book to complete it, they either followed the link or they check that they did it. Same thing with a file. It could be, well, let's do a file. Same thing for all these. So if I wanted them to download the syllabus, and I'm going to plop my syllabus in here. So I'm going to browse for, I'm going to guess that I've got it sitting right there. I've got an updated one, but I'll throw that one in there for now. And I'm going to upload that file. And then activity completion, now I've got a little more of an option. Students can mark or activities complete when, same thing. They have to view it, and by viewing it, they're downloading it, okay, because it's a PDF. So now, again, resources, same thing. They're going to click on there. They're going to get here. They're going to click and look at my syllabus, and then it's saying that they've done that. So that's the way resources look on this. Activities, however, are completely different. Because they're activities, you can have all kinds of different activity completion things. I'll leave that down there because we'll play with that in a minute. So I can do an assignment now. I'll do an assignment, and we'll say it's chapter 1. I want to sleep over there. Questions 1 through 10. I don't know. We'll say I've got some questions that I'm doing, questions 1 through 10, and then I would put those maybe questions here. Maybe I've got a file that I dropped there. I don't have to do either one of those. And normal availability stuff, when is it going to be on the calendar, how are they going to submit stuff, that all stays the same. But now down here in activity completion, I have some new things. So I'm going to say this thing is worth 10 points, okay? And just like I normally do with any other assignment, now I've got the option as well to say, what does it take to pass? And this has nothing to do with A, B, C, D. It's saying to complete and move on, or to get credit for this, which you can use for badges and other things. I'm going to say you need a 7 to pass this. Okay, you got to at least have a 70% on this to pass. And the reason I'm putting something in there is right down here in activity completion. So I still have that option of letting students mark that they got done, or now I have conditions. And here's my conditions. Number 1, student must view this activity completed. I don't know why you'd complete an assignment by viewing it, but you could. Or 2, students must receive a grade to complete it. Or student must submit this activity to complete it. So the difference here is if they turn in the assignment, I don't have to grade the assignment for them to move on, but they have to at least turn in the assignment in order to move on. And I'll be honest, this is what I normally use. I normally use has to submit to move on, but you could easily say, oh, you're not moving on until I've actually graded the assignment and they've got X grade on it as well. So those, you can see now we've got new options here. I'm going to go and hit save and display, and I'm going to come back in here again and edit again and come back down and show you activity completion. I thought I had to get a passing grade was one of the ones that showed up. Maybe that's only on tests. Okay, so we've got these completion requirements that we've got on there. So I'm going to go and return to course on that one, because we're kind of trying to add a couple different activities to show you that. And I'm going to go down to my chapter 3 real quick, because I have to do it on a section that they haven't actually taken yet, in order to show you how to change the completion on that. So I'm going to go down here to the very bottom of chapter 3, right here to my chapter 3 fight. And I'm going to go to edit settings here to show you what that is. Now this one, I'm going to hit expand all so you can kind of see it. This particular test is worth, actually let me look, is worth 70 points, okay? So it's worth 70 points in my grade book, and down here under grade, I've said to pass, you have to get 40 points. And why am I pointing that out? Because down here now, in this one under activity completion, I have other options, and one of which is they have to have a grade, but now they've got to have a passing grade, and I've got or all attempts are completed. I don't know why this is locked, because no one could have taken this one yet, because it doesn't start. Where's my expend all? There we go. It didn't start until 12 October, which isn't for 2 more days, so I'm not sure how that one worked. Oh, it may be closed from last year. Here's what I'm going to do, which is one of the great things about Moodle now that we couldn't do on the previous versions. I can just hit copy on that, and now I've made a duplicate with all the same restrictions and everything, but on the duplicate no one has actually completed it. So whereas before I could not go in and change the activity completion, now no one's ever taken it, so I've got that ability. So show complete when the following conditions are met. Students must receive a grade. Now require a passing grade or all attempts completed. So if you wanted to say you've got 4 attempts on this, you can't move on, and I do this with quizzes, you can't move on until you've either passed the thing with an 80%, which is what I do on quizzes, or I only give you 3 attempts, so when you've done 3 attempts and not done an 80, you can move on as well. Those are options too. Or you could just say, hey, you've got to have finished it, you've got to get a grade in order to continue on. So you've got to take the test in chapter 3 before you can, for instance, see chapter 4. So I've got that one set up. I'm going to go ahead and change it to must receive a grade. On this one, I'm going to hit save and return. I'm going to delete that other one there real fast so that doesn't confuse me later on. So I've only got one fight on there. Oop, oh, I just deleted the wrong one. I thought I was working on this one. I wasn't. I deleted the skirmish they actually had taken. Oops. Some students are going to be really confused. Oops. And oh, that's terrible, because I really just messed something up there, not looking at what I was doing when I did that. So this one, I do want to have completion require that, because this is the quiz, require a passing grade, so they have to get, in this case, it's a low point assignment as far as how much it's worth, but if they don't get an 80%, they haven't passed it and don't see the next thing coming up. Oh, I really wish I hadn't done that. Okay, so what I meant to do that with was the chapter 3 fight, and let's see what I thought that's what I was clicked on in the first place. Oh, Jiminy Crickets. Okay, and there we go. They have to have received a grade in order to move on with that assignment. I was wondering why it showed that those things were done, and oops. So I can delete the extra fight that I just made on there, and somebody's going to be confused why, or 4 people are going to be confused why they thought they had a grade on that and it went away. Okay, so that's activity completion. Now, what's the whole point of this? One of the points is to make it so that students maybe accomplish some things before they accomplish other things. With gamification of a course, the idea is that not everything's there all the time. That there are things that will come and go and be there for one person and not be there for another person, and the whole idea is that they have to explore to find things out. So, for instance, if I wanted them to make sure they read this course syllabus before they could even move on, I've got this activity, and now I can start restricting access and view of things based solely on other things being done. So I'm going to go ahead and say you have to read the course syllabus, and then you'll see the course syllabus questions, for instance. So let me change what the name of this is. Okay, so these are questions that we're gonna have over the course syllabus to make sure everybody understands what they are. And so now I'm going to restrict access to this under restrict access before people can even see it. So I'm going to open that up. So right now there's no access restrictions. I'm going to say add a restriction, and now we have tons of things that we can do. We can do it by activity completion, which is what we're going to do here in a second. You can do it by date, so until that date nobody sees it. You don't have to open and close chapters or anything. Just like my E-days you saw went away in May, you can make it so they don't show up until October or November or December. You can make it so you have to have a specific grade. So for instance, if you wanted to make enrichment activities that all your kids that are doing really well in the class are doing, you could say your grade has to be X in order to see this, or conversely you could say if your grade is below X, you see this. You could say different groups see different things. So if you're a member of a specific group, you see this. If you're a member of a different group, you see this, which gives me a really good idea how I'm going to do something. You can do it based on user profile fields. You can do it based on stash, which we'll talk about in a minute. You could do it if you're gamifying based on what level your students are on. I don't even know what this restriction set is. I haven't used that. We're going to go to the easy one, the activity completion, because we're going to say you have to have completed the syllabus review before you can take the questions over the syllabus. So we're going to hit activity completion. So activity, the first thing I have to do is choose what activity. Now, I have a lot of things that are already tracked as being completed in my course, but they're all in order. So they're in order on how they show up in the course. So right there I see course syllabus. Right above syllabus review. And actually, that's not even the syllabus that I'm looking at. It's down here because it's right before chapter. It's the bottom of chapter 1. So I'm going to say they have to have that, and it has to be marked complete. Or you can do the obvious. Look, you can say be marked complete, must not be marked complete. In other words, you haven't done it, you see this. Must be marked complete with a pass grade, must be marked complete with a fail grade. So I can say a good, bad, you can have things show up that the students are not doing well. Intervention activities automatically show up if they did the previous thing poorly, or a new activity that they're going to do that's going to press them farther if they did really well on that, if they haven't finished, if they have. I'm going to say if they have finished. So they've got to have marked that complete. Now, right now, if I left it alone and hit save, they're still going to see it, they just can't get into it. Okay? But if I close the eyeball right here and check the eyeball, then basically it's saying now it's hidden until that happens. So I'm going to save and return to course, and you'll see what it looks like for you as a teacher. So for you as a teacher down here, it says they see the course syllabus, and then this one's grayed out. It says not available unless the activity course syllabus is marked complete, parentheses hidden otherwise. In other words, that's not even there for them. They don't see it at all because they haven't done that. And as soon as they've done that, as soon as they come back out of the page, it's there now. Okay, so activity completion and activity restrictions can be really, really cool way of differentiating your course with yes, there's initial setup time without question, but if I was going to have this already, how much more was it to put that it's completed and explain what the checkmark thing is to the students. But now maybe I don't have one assignment, now maybe I have 2 or 3 assignments that I start to differentiate automatically in the class based on the student that's taking the class and how well they've done on other activities. And if they do poorly on this, and I know that's a bad example, if they do poorly on this, now they see a refresher video on something. Okay? let me give you a for instance. My class, if they do poorly on a test, they have the option of retaking that test. And I'm gonna just close these things out so I don't forget. So the Chapter 1 fight is worth 70 points. And to pass the test, they have to get, and this is to pass as far as completion, they have to get 45 points. So so just to give us a straight percentage, because I don't know off the top of my head. So if they don't get a 64%, they didn't pass the test, okay? So when they're taking this, and I could raise that obviously to whatever number I wanted to say what a passing grade is for activity completion. But if they want to retake the test, there are some items that they have to do in my class. And they're called intervention activities, and they don't have to fail to take them. But these are, it says intervention activities for test retakes. They can see this one. And when they're done with that one, then they can see this one. And when they're done with that one, they can see this one. And when they're done with that one, they can see this one. And when they're done with that one, they can see this one. And when they're done with that one, they can see this note that pops up. And I'm going to turn off editing so you can see that a little bit better. And this note, if they see it, says, Intervention IA1 or Activity 1 complete. Please email Mr. Poole concerning the test retake. You'll be emailed the password to take it during intervention. The test will only be reopened for 2 days for you to accomplish the retake. Do not share the email password with any class members. If they complete the activities, they will be emailed the password. The password will change each time there's a... Okay. So this must be done before the end of the quarter. I don't change previous quarter grades, but I do give the students the opportunity to, if they did poorly when we took the test, to do 5 extra assignments to earn the right to do that. Now, of these assignments, not all of them are graded. Some of them are graded activities. Some of them are just a video. They've got to come in here and watch this video on the basic parts of the mother. Okay? And after they've watched that video, then they get to the next one. Some of these are mini quizzes. If you look at the little description next to them, all these are just resources. In Chapter 2, the same thing includes assignments, a paper. There's a self-graded quiz in there. So that's a view, an assignment, a quiz, an assignment kind of thing to do the same thing. And some of these things are I read that, and some of them are automatically checking to see whether you've done the activity as well. So activity restrictions and completion status really are cool because it allows us to auto-differentiate between students and give differentiated both instruction and resources based on how particular students are doing and what group they're in, and all those things that and you can play with it all you want. You can just, if you mess it up, in fact, this is the way I really played with it in the beginning. If I'm like, I'm not sure how to do this, so I'll hit the copy button and I'll mess with the copy and see if it works the way I want, and if it does, I'll delete the other one. If it doesn't work the way I want, I delete that one and I make another copy. So it makes it really easy. You can see in here I can also have whole sections hidden. So here's the Chapter 2. It's not available, hidden otherwise, unless it's after September 15th, which means we're well into Chapter 2, or the Chapter 1 fight test is marked complete. So if they finish that, they automatically see this, and sections are hidden through the edit right up here. Right here I say edit topic, and there's my little topic up there. And down here under restrict access, I've got the same things done. Okay, student must match any of the following. Not all, any of them, because after that date it's just going to show up, but you can have any or all, right? So I've got this drop down, all. It has to be after this date, and they have to have done that, which is not what I have set up. So, sorry, light. So it's hidden because I poked the needle in the eye, or the eyeball right there. It's hidden until the student has done any of these things. After that date, or the previous chapter's fight is done, I could also add a restriction if I wanted to. If I wanted to say, okay, they can only do that if their level is greater than 3 or 4, which is part of gamification in the level up one. But you could say that certain groups of activities are only if a kid is or a student is met a certain level. You can also go and say that, well, this section is only for Orange 2, which is that, and I can make a whole different section for Orange 3 if I wanted to. So that's another way that I can do the restrictions. And then I can go and say the grade, and either it can be on a specific item, and you can see all those items are in there for the grade. So I can go, or you can see these first quarter grade, first semester grade. I can go and put in any of the sections that I have in my grade book. I can also say are in here as well. So you can see there's formative. Where's my formative and summative sections? Oh, they're down here at the end of the first quarter. I don't see one formative. Where is that at? Way down here somewhere? Really confused why that's not in the same order. I see first quarter. So I could say first quarter grade has to be above 75% in order to even see this section. So where they're at right now, which is dynamic, right? Because the first quarter grade's changing all the time. So you could have a whole section that only, and obviously if I did this, I'd have another section corresponding to the kids below it. So that whole block is for my kids that are doing really well in the class, and I could have a whole nother block for the kids that are in the middle, and a whole nother block for the kids that are struggling in my class, so they get different things presented to them automatically by how well they're doing in the class. If I did that, I would make them look similar enough so the student next to them doesn't see the difference. Because I really don't want to make the student feel awkward, right? That I'm not doing well in the class. You're trying to give them more support maybe, but not obviously make them an object of ridicule with their classmates. So if I did that, I'd have the blocks look almost exactly the same with different content inside the links as well. So you can see that the different kinds of restrictions that I can put on there are really, really nice. So that is the, I'm going to leave page because I don't need this. So that's the basics of activity completion. It's a really easy thing to do. You really need to explain to the kids, to your students, what those solid versus hashed check marks mean. You've got to do something versus you've got to tell me, right? The hashed ones are you have to accomplish something. In this case, I have to read the I-CANs in order to get the check mark. In this case, I have to submit the self-assessment survey in order to get the check mark. In this case, I'm reading that and I have to check it physically, just go on and check there that you did that mission and you got that mission complete, yet you did this mission, I got this mission complete, kind of thing. Now, there's some that are a little bit harder than others. For instance, my books, in the chapter 1 one's kind of short. That's probably not as good of an example as my chapter 2 one. So when I go in my chapter 2 book, there's a lot of articles to read here. And if I just use activity completion based on right there, I clicked on that one, and now I get credit for reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 articles. That could be bad, right? The chance of every student going through every single one of these 11 articles is slim, right? So we have some other things that we can add here in our pages that we can use to track whether students are going through and going all the way to the bottom and reading those things. So I'm going to show you, I deleted the ones out of this one so that I could show you how to add them. They're called stash, and they're basically little pickup items that you can also use for completion to see if the kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So this is chapter 2, and I'm going to add a bio stash one in there, and these require pictures when I do this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look for a little picture. I'm going to go just type in BIOS, and I'm going to go to images, and I'm going to look for a little picture I can use, hoping I can get a little BIOS chip. That would be perfect right there. That one would be better. Okay, so I'm going to save this image as BIOS. And I'm going to use this in just a second, and I should have paid attention to where I saved that. Nope, not the link. I don't want the link. I want the image. Save image as. I'm using Firefox because to me it's easier to save pictures in Firefox. Pictures, form factor. Okay, good enough. So now I wanna know whether they read all the way through the bottom of the Dell BIOS beep codes, because they're supposed to read all the way down through here and look at this. So I want to add something down here that lets me know they got down to there, and that is called stash. And I'm going to go back to my page, and I'm going to go to this stash, and I'm going to get it. This is a side block that I have to add called stash, and you can see a bunch of ones that I have there already, and I'm going to add one in here. So I'm going to add an item, and I'm going to call it Chapter 2 BIOS, and I'm going to drag. Well, I can drag, or I can just click on here and browse to my pictures, and my form factor, and my little BIOS. Second, let's see if that uploads right. Yeah, it did. Okay, so it's going to say it's called the Chapter 2 BIOS stash, and I'm going to go save and next, and you can say where this particular stash is, and I'm going to say BIOS reading. Spell. Chapter 2. That's good enough. Okay, supplies. How many times can they pick up this stash? So you're going to see they have to pick it up, and they can click on it. So it's going to see how many are available to them and how often can they pick it up. Well, depending on if you're going to use this for more than one place, I am just going to leave it at 1, and I'm going to say every week. How often are they going to come in here and try to pick up this? So I'm going to say save and next, and here's what it's going to look like right now. It's going to say pick up. That's going to say Chapter 2 BIOS. You can change the button to say read it instead, which is what I always do. And then down here is the snippet. So I'm going to grab that snippet. I'm going to Control C, and then go back to the main screen, and I've added that Chapter 2 BIOS right there. Now I have to go over here and put that snippet in there. So I'm going to turn editing on. If you haven't used a book before, I'm going to hit the edit key, and it's just like everything else as far as the Moodle editor goes. But I have to do HTML, so I have to hit that extra button here, and then this button right here lets me do HTML. So I'm going to click that. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, I have no idea what that is. Doesn't matter. I go all the way to the bottom, and at the very end, I'm going to paste that snippet right down there. And then I'm going to hit Save Changes. And now at the very end of that article, there's this little button that says Read It. So what's that do for me? Now I have this new way of tracking in this in particular. When there's multiple things going on, or something big to read, or something that you really want to know whether they did all those things, or let them come back in and do it more often. I said one's available per week. You could say more than that. You could say there's unlimited, but they can only come back once a week and get it. But now, if they come down to the bottom here, they click that they read it, I know they made it to the bottom of that article because they just put that in their stash. So what's that mean? So I now know that they at least read through these articles until they found the stash. Now, again, any student can go and click here, go to the bottom, click here, go to the bottom, just keep looking for it. By the way, you can embed that anywhere in the middle. You can put that stash anywhere you want to, okay? It's like Easter eggs that you're hiding. Now, that was in the book, and they're doing this PC boot blended mission here. Where's my book out in here? The book's way down here in chapter reading. I can say that they can't do this until they've done the other. Let me think which one would be really good. BIOS and CMOS. Okay, I'm not going to let them start this until they've read that, because that's part of what the intervention activity would be. So right now I've got this available to me, and now I can go down to restrict access. There's no restriction right now. I'm going to add one. I'm going to say they have to have gotten the stash called Chapter 2 BIOS, and they have to have gotten it exactly one time. Or you can say more than 0. So if they've got it a bunch of times, that they'll still let it in, because exactly 1 means if they got it 2, they can't see that. So you have to think about how you want them to do this. So right now it's going to say, hey, you can get in there, but you can only get in there if you've read and got that, found that stash. So now if I go back to it, I notice I did not poke it in the eye, because I want them to know they have to go get that. In that case, I don't want them to sit there going, I have no idea. So now they see this, but it says not available unless you've got Chapter 2 BIOS, which means they can click on that all they want to, but it's not going to go anywhere because they haven't got the prerequisite. Now, they still can't see all these because they're all hidden, but I've said, hey, you've got to have read about BIOS to go and do this part of it. And you should have done that already in the class, right? Because we're doing this intervention activity to get more information, and you haven't even got the start of the information. So that's where I could use stash. When students go over here and look at the stash report, I can go and see who got what stashes so far. And not everybody's got all the stashes in there, right? So I really want to see who's read through what. I'm not sure why Mr. Studebaker was grabbing stash in my class, but who's done what and who's gone where. So that's what that's for. It's a one added. Now it's an add-on on the side, whereas the other ones, the activity restriction completion, you just go and say, I want to be able to restrict and follow completion. Stash is one that you add on, and if you've never added a side block, you just turn editing on. And did I just turn it off? Okay, it's on. And then I go on the left-hand side. It's always on the left hand. It's not going to show it for me because I've already got it on the right-hand side. You just drop down, you add stash, and then it'll show up, and you can drag it to the other side if you want to, and then you'll have it over there. So I'll be honest. We've got some new things. The gamification has gotten better this year. The stash has gotten better this year. The activity completion has gotten better this year. So I have not got stash everywhere. And if we look back at this setup, there is not nearly as much as I'm gonna have. Because what I really want to have, and I've got it on, you can see it's on all my ICANNs, to make sure that they've read the ICANN. So when they go here to the Chapter 1 ICANN, it's not just did they click on it, did they click on it, and did they take the stash while they're there? Because if they go here, if they go here to my Chapter 1 and they click on this, they don't get credit. They got to go down to the bottom to the little ICANN icon down here and say they read it. Both those things have to be true. They have to scroll the bottom before they're going to see this one, okay? You got the Chapter 1 ICANN hidden otherwise. And they're like, what? What's that? Well, they got to go back and look for it again, right? So that's what activity completion restrictions are about. They're about making it so their students aren't inundated. In fact, you see all this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and switch role to student. When I switch role to student in mine, I see way less stuff. Let me go to Chapter 2 because I did more of it there. Way less stuff than I would otherwise. I only see the really basic things. And I could have, and probably should have, made it, probably will, make it so that the only assignment in here is the first one, so that they can't skip it. They can't skip it. They have to do that in order to see this. And so that it's building. Now that's true with all these, right? It says right there, not available unless you've got that. So they see it, but they can't click anything here until they've got the first thing. Oh, that's that one. So that's the way that those activity restrictions work. If anybody's got a question, It's 3:30 now, so we'll go ahead and cut it off here. And I feel bad I haven't even been watching on the chat at all. I need to set my laptop so it stops going to sleep on me. If anybody has any questions, just let me know, and I'll try to fill in any blanks that I left out there on the activity restrictions. And I will hopefully thank you very much for coming. See, right there, and we're done.